Is about the Syrian civil war. The ISIS lost ground in Syria and they blame Russia for it. At its peak, the ISIS controlled about a third of Syria. But then in 2015, Russia entered the Syrian war. They supported the regime of Bashar al-Assad and they played a crucial role in neutralizing ISIS. Since then, the Islamic State has targeted Russia. In 2015, they bombed a Russian plane, a chartered flight carrying over 200 passengers from Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt to St. Petersburg in Russia. The ISIS planted a bomb on this plane. 2 years later, in 2017, they carried out a suicide bombing in Russia. The bomber blew up a subway car. And in 2022, they targeted the Russian embassy in Kabul. This too was a suicide attack. It happened right after the Taliban took power in Afghanistan. In fact, the Taliban's return has given momentum to ISIS. They're adding to their ranks and they're planning bigger attacks. So Russia must be on alert. Vladimir Putin has just won a record 5th term in office, and look at his history. Just before his first stint as president, Russia suffered a series of terror attacks. There were apartment bombings in multiple cities in Russia back in 1999. More than 300 people were killed. Putin was prime minister then. He blamed the Chechen rebels for these bombings and he launched a brutal attack on them. Months later, Putin took over as the president of Russia. His critics say the same story will repeat this time, that he'll use this latest attack to further tighten his grip on power and to intensify the attack on Ukraine. Not like he needed an excuse, but the fact is that Putin has been quite vocal about his commitment to secure Russia. So one can safely assume that he won't spare anyone who's perceived to be a threat. A campaign of retaliation will follow, and that could also mean more pain for Ukraine. Let's turn to West Asia now. A very important alliance is reaching its breaking point. The one between Israel and the US. It's been a rock-solid one, an alliance that has shaped modern West Asia. But the Gaza war could snap it. On Monday, the United Nations Security Council voted on a new ceasefire proposal. Now, normally, the US would have vetoed it, but this time they did not. 14 UNSC members supported the resolution and the United States abstained. So the ceasefire resolution was passed. It was the first since the war broke out in October. And what does this resolution say? Well, broadly, it says 3 things. 1, a ceasefire during the month of Ramadan. 2, the release of all hostages held by Hamas. And 3, more aid shipments to Gaza. Now, in the past, the US had opposed all such resolutions. They vetoed 3 of them in 6 months. So what has changed now? What has changed is the situation in Gaza. Some 32,000 Palestinians have been killed. Almost 70% of the victims are women and children, plus humanitarian aid is drying up. Most of Gaza is on the brink of famine. So Joe Biden is feeling the pressure. Arab nations are asking him to change his position. Muslim Americans are abandoning him. So the US decided to abstain from voting. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is quite upset with Biden. In fact, listen to his statement. I'm quoting, "The United States has abandoned its policy in the United Nations today. This resolution will harm both the war effort and the effort to release the hostages." But Washington does not see it that way. They say their policy is unchanged.
We're kind of perplexed by this. The Prime Minister's office seems to be indicating through public statements that we somehow changed here. We haven't. And we get to decide what our policy is.
So the US is changing its policy, but they say they're not. Will Netanyahu play along is the question. An Israeli delegation was supposed to visit the US this week, but Prime Minister Netanyahu has cancelled it. His defense minister also said the war will continue, meaning no ceasefire in Gaza. But can Israel really do that? Can they ignore a United Nations Security Council resolution? UN officials say they cannot. Israel is a member of the United Nations, therefore all UNSC resolutions are binding on them. But the United States has a different idea. They say this resolution is non-binding.
So with respect to the first resolution, it is our interpretation of this resolution that it is non-binding. And for any detail on that, I would refer you to the office of our ambassador to the United Nations, who can, of course, speak in more detail of how we reached that conclusion.
So there's major legal confusion here, but politically it's a signal from the US. Yes, they have changed their policy, but it's not a U-turn yet. It's not a complete abandonment of Israel, at least not yet. But we could easily reach that stage. You see, Joe Biden has all the leverage here. Most major powers have turned against Israel. Even US rivals are backing Palestine, so it's not like Netanyahu can go running to the other side. Plus, Israel is a regional power. It cannot sustain a war against global opinion. Not like the US did in Iraq or like Russia is doing in Ukraine. Because eventually Israel will feel the heat, and Biden knows this. He's got a lot more levers to pull. The most important being military aid. Israel has been the biggest recipient of US aid since the Second World War. Do you know how much money we're talking about here? Almost $124 billion. That's what America has given Israel. In recent years, the annual aid has been $3.3 billion. That's 15% of Israel's military budget. We're talking about missiles, fighter jets, bullets, ammunition. Last month, a new plan was presented in the US Congress, an aid package worth $17 billion. Again, pure military aid. And it's not just about the money. It's also about the type of weapons. You may have heard about Israel's Iron Dome. It shoots down rockets and missiles fired at Israel. The Iron Dome. Now, the Iron Dome is a joint project. Israel and the US produce it together. So when the Iron Dome runs low on ammo, the US refills it. What if Biden holds back on that? Israel could be left vulnerable. So far, Joe Biden has not done that. In fact, he's expanded his military aid since the war broke out. I've got some numbers for you there. By December, the US had sent some 230 cargo planes and 20 ships to Israel. And what was in these shipments? 21,000 precision-guided munitions, thousands of bunker busters, 200 kamikaze drones, 57,000 artillery shells, and 15,000 bombs. All of this in less than 6 months. So the takeaway is quite clear. Israel may be fighting the war in Gaza, but their weapons are American. If Joe Biden cuts off those shipments, Israel will struggle. They may defeat Hamas in Gaza, but they will struggle to replenish their arsenal. So it's a big lever for Joe Biden. The question is, will he use it? A lot of countries have stopped military aid to Israel already, like Spain, Canada, the Netherlands, and Japan. All of them are American allies. Some US Democrats are also pushing for it. They're asking the president to cut off military aid. Having said that, it's still a nuclear option. Biden would be up against decades of US policy and tradition. But at this rate, who knows? Netanyahu is famous for pushing American presidents to the brink. We'll have to wait and see how Biden handles him. Now let's talk about Xi Jinping, another leader that Joe Biden is trying to contain. Again, it's a tough one. The US and China have been fighting a trade war of sorts for a while, but American businesses do not want to pick a side. They want access to the Chinese market. In fact, some top American CEOs are in Beijing as we speak. They're trying to get some FaceTime with the Chinese president. The meeting could happen as soon as Wednesday. Now, we do not have a full list of the CEOs who are there, but we do have some names that are doing the rounds, like Albert Bourla, the chief executive of Pfizer, Raj Subramaniam of FedEx, and Milind Pant of Amway. Apparently, the invitation came out of the blue. These CEOs were supposed to leave today. They'd gone to Beijing for the China Development Forum, which is an annual event where China invites business leaders, scholars, and heads of international organizations. Xi Jinping did not attend this forum, but reports say he's open to sitting down with a group of top CEOs. So Beijing extended an invite, and these CEOs decided to stay back. China is keeping it hush-hush. The guest list remains a secret, plus the invitation makes no reference to Xi Jinping. It simply says the CEOs will get a chance to, quote-unquote, meet a top Chinese leader. The Chinese Foreign Ministry was asked about this today, about this meeting, but it did not give any details. Guess we'll have to wait till tomorrow. But the point we want to dwell on right now is this. Why does Xi Jinping want to meet America's top CEOs? He's been trying to woo them. He has broken his economy, and he hopes to fix it with their help. The growth rate in China has dropped to around 5%, which is their lowest in decades. And one big reason for that is the fall in investment. Last year, foreign investment in China dropped to a 30-year low. Now, the US is some of the biggest companies in the world, so these CEOs can open doors. They can drive foreign investments into China. In November last year, Xi Jinping traveled to the US. He met with a large delegation of American business leaders. And this is what he told them.
I believe that once the door to China-US relations is opened, it will not be closed again. Once started, the cause of China-US friendship cannot be derailed halfway. The tree of our people's friendship has grown tall and strong, and it can surely withstand the assault of any winter storm.
Did the pitch work? Well, it did not boost investments into China, but it did drive attendance at the forum in Beijing. Over the weekend, as many as 100 CEOs and heads of major financial institutions gathered in Beijing for this forum, and many big names endorsed China.
I'm so happy to be here. It's great to be back in China, and we're continuing to invest.
We have faced challenges before, and we have overcome them together. And China's remarkable journey stands as a testament to what is possible.
China is a market of opportunity. It's a huge market. It's a market which is extraordinarily sophisticated.
What explains these statements? While governments talk about decoupling and de-risking, what drives companies to China? It's a big market. Businesses want to hedge their bets. But can they trust Xi Jinping? He's been making promises and failing to honor them. In November last year, he said China would open up. But the fact is, China has been imposing more restrictions. It has blocked the flow of information. It has stopped publishing key economic data like unemployment levels. Plus, the Chinese premier has been avoiding business leaders. Every year, he used to meet them for a frank exchange of views, but this time he steered clear of them. That's Premier Li Qiang. He did not meet visiting CEOs. He also stayed away from the global press when the Chinese parliament met earlier this month. The premier spearheads economic policy making in China. But when the same man distances himself, why would business leaders trust Beijing? And it's not like Xi Jinping will answer these questions or engage in a frank conversation. He'll most likely stick to a carefully prepared statement. Despite all of this, the CEOs are eager to meet him. It shows the gap in American strategy. They talk about containing China, but they don't have a plan to do it. So Xi Jinping is having a change of heart. And guess who else is? His newest ally in the Indian Ocean, President Mohammad Muizzu of the Maldives. Muizzu was elected late last year, and since then he's had just one mission: turn the Maldives away from India, or as he calls it, India out. That's been his plank. But his latest statement suggests a rethink, a possible outreach after all the rhetoric. Let me quote from what he said. I conveyed to Prime Minister Modi during our meeting that I did not intend to halt any ongoing projects. Instead, I expressed my desire to strengthen and expedite them. India will continue to remain the Maldives' closest ally. There is no question about it. Talk about a climb down. In January, Muizzu virtually called India a bully, and now he's calling India the Maldives' closest ally. So what's happening here? Is Muizzu reversing his anti-India ideology? After all that he's done, such a change is unlikely, but Muizzu could be angling for something. Maybe some help from India. Again, let me quote from what he said. The conditions we have inherited are such that there are very large loans taken from India. Hence, we are holding discussions to explore leniencies in the repayment structure of these loans. And there you have it. Muizzu wants India to restructure Maldivian debt. How much money is at stake here? Some $400 million. That's how much the Maldives owes India, 400 million. Muizzu wants New Delhi to restructure that, maybe delay the repayment or reduce the interest rates or maybe write off some of this loan. Now, most of these loans were taken for various projects like airports, bridges, houses. If the debt is not serviced, these projects could be halted. And Muizzu does not want that. He has elections next month and his party does not have a majority in parliament. So the last thing President Muizzu wants is for the projects to stop. Hence this outreach. Another reason is domestic opinion. Muizzu's predecessor has lashed out at him. That's Ibrahim Soli. He had a very stern message for Muizzu. Don't be stubborn, seek dialogue with India. It's what anyone would say. For decades, India has been the first responder in the Maldives. It has helped after natural disasters, repelled military coups and given millions in humanitarian aid. So turning away from India is a strategic mistake. And I'm not talking about politics, I'm talking about simple geography. But the question is, has Muizzu finally understood all of this? I'm afraid one statement won't cut it. We've seen multiple anti-India moves since he took charge. He asked Indian soldiers to leave. He cancelled a water survey deal with India. He bought drones from Turkey and he signed a security agreement with China. So one conciliatory remark cannot cover all of that up. It's too early to start celebrating. We'll need to see some consistency from Muizzu, maybe some actions to back his words. Also, the debt alone is not enough leverage for India. And I'll tell you why. China is the largest lender to the Maldives. How much money have they given? Some $3 billion, which is 42% of the Maldives' total foreign debt. So let me recap that for you. The Maldives owes $400 million to India, but they owe $3,000 million to China. Who do you think will have more leverage? Obviously China. So India should not read too much into Muizzu's statements. At best, it represents pragmatism, a realization that he cannot just abandon India overnight. And I guess New Delhi will take that. After all, you can work with a pragmatist, but not a blind ideologue. Vantage continues after a short break.
Decision is we should now know fairly soon.
Today's decision is astounding. The courts recognize that Julian is exposed to a flagrant denial of his freedom of expression rights, that he is being discriminated against on the basis of his nationality, an Australian, and that he remains exposed to the death penalty. And yet, what the courts have done have been to invite a political intervention from the United States, to send a letter saying it's all okay. I find this astounding. 5 years into this case, the United States has managed to show the court that their case remains an attack on press freedom, an attack on Julian's life. What the courts haven't agreed to look at is the evidence that the United States has plotted to assassinate Julian, to kidnap him. Because if it acknowledges that, then of course he can't be sent to the United States.
Have you heard of the Streisand effect? It's when you're trying to hide something and end up drawing more attention to it. Looks like it's the term of the year for the British royal family. Last week, Kate Middleton made an announcement. She said she'd been diagnosed with cancer. It was a somber moment, but the internet has its doubts. They say the video is a deep fake. It's one of the many conspiracy theories surrounding Kate Middleton. She disappeared from spotlight in January, then released a photoshopped image, which she later apologized for. Days later, she appeared in this video, and now the palace is asking for privacy. But its actions are only feeding the speculation. Our next report tells you why no one seems to believe the royal family anymore.
In the medieval era, touring kingdoms was a must for monarchs. They went around the realm, they spoke to people, and they made their presence felt. As Queen Elizabeth once said, royals have to be seen to be believed. Well, guess Kate Middleton didn't get that memo. Since before her marriage to Prince William, Kate's been somewhat of a media darling. She posed for photographs, engaged with the media. Even after giving birth, she was caught posing outside the hospital within mere hours. She was always in the public eye. But all of that changed this January. On January 17th, the palace made an announcement. Kate was admitted for abdominal surgery. She stayed in the hospital until January 29th. But there were no more details. After she was discharged, all her forthcoming commitments were cancelled. The palace said she would be out till Easter, that's March 31st. And it took royal watchers by surprise. There were speculations about her health. Britons questioned the lack of transparency. So on Mother's Day, Kate released a photo. It was meant to be a sweet gesture, but it soon backfired. The photo was manipulated and it fueled several conspiracy theories. It was called #KateGate. There were questions about where she was, doubts about her marriage with Prince William, rumors about her health. Videos of her were circulated on social media. Netizens doubted if it was even Kate. All of this continued until this announcement.
The surgery was successful. However, tests after the operation found cancer had been present.
It came last Friday. The video showed Kate Middleton sitting on a bench. She started on a somber note. Kate announced her cancer diagnosis, revealed that she was in the early stages of chemotherapy, and asked for time, space, and privacy. It led to an outpouring of sympathy. Wishes poured in from across the world. The palace thought this would be the end to the conspiracies, but new theories are now popping up. Social media says that video is not of Kate. They believe it's a deep fake. Essentially, it was generated by artificial intelligence. The internet is already down this royal rabbit hole. They've analyzed her mouth movement, how her hair did not move, the green screen-like background, the disappearing ring. There were videos breaking down the announcement. It was like conspiracy theory on steroids, and it's unlikely to stop anytime soon. The palace says Kate has a right to medical privacy, as we all do. She should take her time to recover, but that won't stop the internet. For the palace, the best bet was transparency. They could have revealed the diagnosis and asked for privacy, and this matter could have been put to rest weeks ago. Instead, they released half-baked statements, put out a manipulated photo, and further fueled the rumors. All of this takes away from the gravity of the situation. The palace may have finally come clean, but at this point, the dumpster fire is out of control. It's a PR disaster. No matter what they say, the public will take it with a pinch of salt. Buckingham Palace says it's now looking for a communications assistant. Well, it better be a competent one to douse this royal flame.
It's election season in India. Normally, diplomacy takes a backseat during this time. The focus is on domestic politics. But in the current climate, that's hard, especially if your rival is China, which is why Indian diplomacy is on in full swing. We saw the Prime Minister travel to Bhutan last week, and now the Foreign Minister is traveling. Minister S. Jaishankar, he's in the Philippines. He had some very important meetings there, first with the Foreign Minister, then with the President, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., aka Bongbong Marcos. Now, the timing of this visit is also very important. China and the Philippines have been clashing non-stop. The root issue is the South China Sea. China claims almost all of it. The Philippines claims some of it. So both militaries have come close to blows. One such incident happened over the weekend. 2 Chinese Coast Guard ships targeted a Philippine boat. They fired water cannons at it. Take a look. That's just one incident. We've seen multiple close calls in the last few months, and that's the background for Jaishankar's visit. India too knows about China's land grabs, so New Delhi can sympathize with Manila. Minister Jaishankar did not address China directly, but his message was pretty clear.
UNCLOS 1982 is particularly important in that regard as the constitution of the seas. All parties must adhere to it in its entirety, both in letter and in spirit. I take this opportunity to firmly reiterate India's support to the Philippines for upholding its national sovereignty.
Some quick context here. UNCLOS is a United Nations convention. It's like a rule book for the seas. In 2013, Manila sued China under these rules. In 2019, a tribunal sided with Manila. It rejected China's claims over the disputed waters. Back then, India did not say very much. India just noted this UNCLOS verdict. But now, India is openly supporting it. It is asking China to adhere to the 2019 verdict. In simple words, India has finally picked a side and it is supporting the Philippines against China. But what does this partnership look like? What is the foundation of it? Well, there are many. Number one is the shared threat. India faces Chinese expansionism in the Himalayas. The Philippines faces it in the seas. Different regions, but the same problem. Number two is trade. In 2015, bilateral trade was around $1.9 billion. In 2022, it has reached close to $3 billion, which is a 58% rise in 7 years. And there's potential for a lot more. Finally, factor number three, military cooperation. In 2022, the Philippines bought BrahMos missiles from India. The deal is worth $370 million. $370 million. The delivery is expected to start this year. Reports say they're also keen on the Tejas fighter jet. Both sides also make regular port calls. In fact, an Indian warship docked in Manila on Monday. It's on a 3-day mission to the Philippines. So there's a lot going for both sides. But the catalyst remains China. There's a common thread between their claims over Indian and Philippine land.
India has no right to unilaterally develop Xiangnan, known as South Tibet in English, which belongs to China. India's actions will only further complicate the border issue and create negative disturbance in the border areas of the two countries.
In the face of illegal intrusion of the Philippine vessels, the Chinese Coast Guard has taken necessary law enforcement measures. Their response on the scene was legitimate, professional, and restrained, which is beyond reproach.
Manila is arguably worse off. They've summoned China's top diplomat in the Philippines, also lodged a diplomatic protest. But the good news is they have support. The US is backing Manila. The European Union is backing Manila. So are Japan and South Korea. Now, India is joining that same camp. It will help New Delhi project power in a new region. We saw evidence of that last year. India and the Philippines held joint drills in the South China Sea. It will also open up new economic frontiers. After all, Manila is a member of ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. So military and strategic ties with the Philippines could give India leverage. Of course, the downside is poking China. Beijing has criticized India's drills in the South China Sea. It has also asked New Delhi to respect its claims in the region. Now, Manila has a mutual defense treaty with the US. Washington has repeatedly promised to defend them, but India has no such backup. So while using China to build this relationship is okay, New Delhi must expand it, create a partnership that goes beyond Beijing. Our next story is from Senegal, a nation in West Africa. They just had an election and they're set to welcome Africa's youngest ever elected president. The provisional results are in and the people of Senegal have chosen. They're bringing in Bassirou Diomaye Faye. Faye turned 44 yesterday. 12 days ago, he was in jail. He's a former tax inspector who says he's bent on eradicating corruption. Well, that profile may sound similar to our Indian viewers, but Faye is not really one for the limelight. He has bluntly said that he is a proxy for Senegal's most famous opposition leader, Ousmane Sonko. Here's our report.
Senegal went to polls on Sunday. It was supposed to be a close election. A David versus Goliath showdown between the old guard and the new, between established politicians and young upstarts, between business as usual and a political overhaul. At the end of the day, it wasn't much of a contest. The old system has fallen, and a new Senegal seems to have emerged, helmed by this man, Bassirou Diomaye Faye.
The Senegalese people have chosen to break with the past, to give substance to the immense hopes raised by our vision of society. I hope that our vision of society has given substance to their aspirations.
Faye will be Senegal's next president. The final vote count isn't out yet, but all his major opponents have conceded defeat and congratulated Faye on his victory, including former Prime Minister Amadou Ba.
Congratulations once again to President Diomaye Faye. I wish him every success at the helm of our country. May God accompany him as he carries out his mission for the greatness of our nation and the well-being of our population.
Bassirou Diomaye Faye is set to become Africa's youngest ever elected president. Yesterday wasn't just the day Faye won the election, it was also his 44th birthday. Faye isn't some career politician. He hasn't spent decades in parliament before trying to win the presidency. If you actually look at his story, it seems to be a miracle that he will become president. Faye spent most of his 20s and 30s in a government job as a tax inspector. The tax job is where he cut his political teeth. He helped form unions, fought for workers' rights, and it is there that he met his political mentor, Ousmane Sonko. Ousmane Sonko is the rock star politician, the one who energizes the crowd, the one who inspired the revolution against the old regime. Another former tax inspector, Sonko entered politics to tackle corruption in Senegal. Sonko contested and came third in Senegal's last presidential election. This was in 2019. Throughout that campaign, Faye was his loyal right-hand man. Faye has been at Sonko's side since their tax inspector days. He has been helping Sonko try and change the system. But Sonko's popularity came at a price. Their former party, PASTEF, came under attack in 2021. The establishment eventually jailed Sonko and dismantled the party. Sonko was barred from running for president over a conviction in a defamation case. Faye was also thrown behind bars last year, but crucially, the right-hand man was not disqualified from standing for the presidency, which is when the plan was hatched. Faye would be Sonko's proxy. Sonko is Faye, Faye is Sonko. That was a slogan used in the run-up to this election. Faye has no problem with that. Sonko too is happy that Faye won.
He is more upright than me, he's more organized than me, and he has better methods. I'm more eloquent and more handsome, but he's better.
The two have worked together for years. They share a close friendship. One of Faye's sons was even nicknamed Ousmane after Sonko. But the real test begins now. Senegal has put a lot of faith in these two men. Let's hope they deliver.
Now let's turn our attention to Spain, where a football match will be taking place later tonight. It will be Spain versus Brazil. On the face of it, it doesn't mean much. It's an international friendly, not really a big deal. No qualifications on offer, no tournament berths, just an entertaining game of football between two world-beating sides. But that's just the surface. Dig deeper and you'll realize the significance. The match is Brazil versus Spain at the Santiago Bernabeu, the home of Real Madrid. So tonight's match throws together club and country for one player, Vinicius Jr.
It's going to be a dream come true, being able to play at my home in Spain, the Bernabeu, wearing the Brazilian jersey. I always dreamt about it, and this is the first time.
The mercurial Brazilian winger at the eye of a storm, the racism storm engulfing Spain, Vinicius is 23 years old. He left Rio de Janeiro in 2018. He's been in Spain for about 6 years, and in these 6 years, he has been subjected to some of the worst racist abuse imaginable. The racist incidents have been increasing year on year, and the worst took place last May. during a match against Valencia. Valencia fans were seen hurling abuses at Vinicius. Racist abuses. The fans were riling him up, trying to throw him off his game, and eventually they succeeded. Vinicius got caught up in a brawl. And even though he did not start it, he was unfairly sent off. Real was furious. They ordered an investigation and Valencia, to their credit, complied. They identified 3 fans and the fans were then prosecuted by Spanish authorities for hate speech. But the racist genie was truly out of the bottle. Over the last year, there have been at least 10 racist incidents involving Vinicius. Fans at Barcelona, Sevilla and Atletico Madrid have abused Vinicius. They know the racist taunts will affect the Real Madrid star, so they keep hurling abuse at him. And while he may be a footballing superstar, but at the end of the day, Vinicius is a human being, a 23-year-old to boot. So of course, he reacts, and the racism has taken a toll. It all came out yesterday.
I arrive at every game with my head focused on the game in order to do my best for my team. But that's not always possible. I need to focus really hard. Every day. I'm sorry. I just want to play football. I just want to play. I just want to do whatever I can for my club and for my family.
That is a football legend in the making, reduced to tears because of constant abuse. Sent his way by people without a shred of empathy or humanity, the absolute worst sort of football hooligans. Vinicius broke down during a pre-match press conference, but he did not end the presser. He continued to take questions and say his piece. When asked about how to end the racism, he said that football's governing bodies had to do more. FIFA, UEFA, Spain's football governing body, and even the clubs themselves, everyone needs to step up. They can't just take action when an incident goes viral and ignore it every other day. They need to tackle the problem head on. Maybe take a leaf out of Brazil's book. Last year, after the Valencia incident, Rio de Janeiro brought in a new law. They called it the Vini Jr. Law after Vinicius. It punishes football fans for racist behavior with up to 5 years in prison. The law sends a strong message to the racists. It acts as a deterrent. It may not change minds, but it will make the racists fear consequences. And this kind of law should be widespread. It's the least that FIFA can do to protect players. It's the bare minimum protection that people like Vinicius deserve. As for the star himself, he's finding his own ways to deal with the abuse.
I've never really thought about leaving, because if I leave, I'm giving these racists what they actually want. So I'm going to stay here, fighting, playing in the best club in the world, winning titles, scoring many goals. And they'll have to see my face even more because I'm only evolving, playing football and bringing joy to my people.
We hope he succeeds. It would be the best response to those who target him. In the US, the state of Maryland has declared an emergency. It follows an incident that looks more like a Hollywood stunt. You have to see it to believe it. This is what happened in Baltimore. A ship struck a bridge. The bridge snapped and collapsed. Reports say the ship was manned entirely by a crew of Indians. Now, none of the crew members were injured, but the vehicles and people on the bridge were plunged into the water. Reports say at least 20 people fell into the water. 2 survivors have been pulled out. One of them is in a serious condition. Authorities are calling it a mass casualty event. Our next report tells you more.
At around 1:30 a.m. today, according to Eastern Daylight Time, an unlikely catastrophe struck Baltimore in the U.S. state of Maryland. A 948-foot container ship struck the Francis Scott Key Bridge. This is a major bridge in Baltimore. It is 2.57 kilometers long and stands on the Patapsco River. Upon collision, the bridge snapped and collapsed. At least 20 people and several vehicles were plunged into the river. Meanwhile, the ship caught fire, sending plumes of thick smoke into the air. So far, 2 people have been rescued. One of them is in critical condition. Emergency services are calling this a mass casualty event, and Maryland has declared a state of emergency.
We're basically searching for everyone that was potentially on the bridge.
The Coast Guard's primary mission right now is search and rescue, looking for any survivors in the water. We're working with numerous federal, state, and local partners on scene on these search and rescue efforts.
This disaster may be the worst US bridge collapse since 2007. That's when the I-35W bridge in Minneapolis collapsed into the Mississippi River, killing 13. Many are still unable to grasp the scale of this event.
I really ran and looked. I went over there and sure as anything, it was gone. The whole bridge was just like, there was nothing there. And I started recording. I was like, I can't believe this.
Question is, how did it happen? According to the White House, there was no indication of nefarious intent. According to Maryland Governor Wes Moore, the ship had lost power. The crew lost control. They alerted authorities about it and issued a mayday request, but around the same time, the ship collided with the bridge.
It's likely that significant investigation will need to take place on what remains. Rebuilding will take a long time.
But other than the investigation and search and rescue, there's another major problem at hand.
We're losing a very main port for our transportation, our distribution, all of it. Like, I'm worried about how people are going to be getting food, water, because trucks for transport or like cargo delivery trucks, they take the Key Bridge every day. There's hundreds of them on the bridge every day.
Port Baltimore is one of the busiest US ports. It is the busiest for car shipments. After the accident, it has been closed. This threatens to disrupt supplies of goods, from cars to coal, and even basic commodities like sugar. This is bound to increase delays and costs. This incident is as rare as it is shocking. Singapore, where the vessel was registered, will also launch an investigation into the ship. And while foul play has been ruled out, there are still many unanswered questions as to what caused this accident and whether it could have been avoided.
In India's Ladakh, hundreds of people have been protesting. At the center of it is a man called Sonam Wangchuk, an innovator and climate activist. On the 6th of March, he started a hunger strike. It has ended today, but the demands still remain. Here's what they want: constitutional safeguards for Ladakh and protection of Ladakh from industrialization. It's a tough one for the government, balancing ecological concerns with economic needs, ensuring development without hurting the environment. Here's a report.
On March 6th, hundreds gathered in Leh. The temperatures were sub-zero, but that did not stop the crowd. They showed up in support of this man, Sonam Wangchuk, an engineer and education reformer from Ladakh. Wangchuk was starting his climate fast. It was to make his demands heard. The hunger strike would go on for 21 days. It has finally ended today. But the demands remain the same. Include Ladakh in the 6th schedule of the Constitution and give statehood to the region. The 6th schedule ensures autonomy for tribal areas. It also guarantees land protection, and that's what Wangchuk wants for Ladakh. Then there are climate-related demands, like protecting Ladakh's fragile ecosystem. From development projects, growing industrialization, industrial mining, and the expanding tourism. These are valid concerns, but equally important is Ladakh's economic growth. The region is rich in natural resources. There's limestone, which is used for construction. There are reserves of sulfur, used for making car batteries, oil refining, and mineral extraction. And borax, a substance only found in Ladakh in India. It's a major ingredient in household cleaners. Several industrial groups have shown interest in this. They want to explore the region. Hydropower is another frontier. 7 projects have been proposed so far. It could bring in a lot of money. So the government has to balance ecological concerns with economic needs. In 2019, they promised to include Ladakh in the Constitution's 6th schedule. But progress has been limited. The central government has met with the protesters. It has also promised to review the demands. But so far, nothing concrete. Last year, the Home Minister set up a high-powered committee on Ladakh. It was to discuss constitutional safeguards for the region. The 6th schedule provides for the formation of ADCs, That's autonomous district councils. They are essentially autonomous administrative regions. They have legislative, judicial and administrative autonomy in a state. They can make laws and regulations regarding the area, including jobs. Currently, it applies to the states of Assam, Meghalaya, Mizoram and Tripura. The protesters want the same for Ladakh. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has promised to develop Ladakh as a carbon-neutral destination. The plan is to use green energy to power Ladakh's growth. The way forward will be through consensus building. One climate fast may have ended today, but the protest is not over.
Our next story comes from Mumbai, the financial capital of India. Mumbai is also called the maximum city for a number of reasons, including its number of billionaires now. Mumbai has 92 billionaires, the maximum in Asia. It has surpassed Beijing for the first time and is among the top 3 billionaire capitals in the world. Mumbai comes after New York and London. So what is driving this billionaire boom and what does it mean for India? Our next report tells you.
If the movie Crazy Rich Asians had a sequel, there's a good chance it could be based in Mumbai, India's financial capital. After all, Mumbai is now home to 92 billionaires. The city has emerged as Asia's billionaire hub and ranks third globally, after New York's 119 billionaires and London's 97. What's more, Mumbai has surpassed Beijing for the very first time, edging past its 91 billionaire count. As a country, though, China has the highest number of overall billionaires, followed by the US, then India. In terms of numbers, China has 814 billionaires compared to India's 271. That's a threefold difference. Yet Mumbai has come out on top. This is a huge feat, but what's behind it? There are two aspects here. First, wealth creation in China has undergone massive changes. Between 2022 and 2023, its number of ultra-rich has shrunk by 155. The country's real estate market is in trouble. Its renewable energy sectors are struggling to grow. Its stock market has remained weak. So the overall wealth of Chinese billionaires has fallen by 15%. But there's another reason here. India's growth. Last year was a strong one for the country. Its already robust economy grew by 7.5%. As did confidence in the Indian economy. India added 94 people to its list of billionaires last year. That's the highest number since 2013. Many existing billionaires also grew richer. These factors have put India on the global wealth map and fueled a meteoric rise in its billionaire count. Now, while Mumbai has put India's growing prosperity on showcase, New Delhi has entered the list of top cities as well, which further underscores this rise. But while India's wealth is rising, so is its inequality. Its wealth inequality has been rising sharply for the last 3 decades. According to Oxfam, the top 10% of the Indian population holds 77% of the total national wealth. And this contrast is clear in Mumbai as well. It may be Asia's billionaire hub, but it's also home to Asia's largest slum. That being said, rise in wealth is overall a good thing for India. This growth in particular in sectors like pharmaceuticals and auto has fueled the economic confidence in the country. So Indian cities taking on the world as billionaire hubs is worth cheering.
Vantage continues after a short break.
Julian is a political prisoner. He is a journalist, and he is being persecuted because he exposed the true cost of war in human lives. This case is a retribution. It is a signal to all of you that if you expose the interests that are driving war, they will come after you. They will put you in prison and they will try to kill you. Julian is just a few days away from the 5th anniversary of his arrest and imprisonment in Belmarsh prison. He has been in Belmarsh for 5 years without conviction, and the charges against him are to punish him for publishing the truth, for publishing evidence of the war crimes committed by the country that is trying to extradite him. Now, the UK courts have invited the United States to issue assurances. The Biden administration should not issue assurances. They should drop this shameful case that should never have been brought. Julian should never have been imprisoned for a single day. This is a shame on every democracy. Julian is a political prisoner. He is a publisher, and he is being published for expressing his political opinion.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. In the UK, a convoy of tractors drove outside the parliament to protest against post-Brexit trade deals. In South Korea, police chase a runaway ostrich through the traffic after it broke free from a zoo. And in Mexico, wildfires continue to ravage parts of the country. Finally, taking you back in history, on this day in 1979, Israel and Egypt signed a historic peace agreement. It came after 5 wars in 3 decades. Egypt was the first Arab nation to sign a peace deal with Israel. Since then, 5 other Arab countries have followed suit. We're leaving you on that note. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Hello and welcome to the late night edition with me, Ayushman Singh Jamwa. Ladies and gentlemen, big breaking news coming in from Pakistan, where the Chinese ambassador to the nation has now met the Interior Minister of Pakistan over the terrorist attack near the Dasu hydropower project in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. Ladies and gentlemen, the attack resulted in the death of 5 Chinese nationals and 1 Pakistani national. And now what we are learning is that the Chinese envoy to Pakistan has met the Interior Minister. Those visuals on your screen, ladies and gentlemen, this coming in the wake of the terror attack in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, where the Chinese ambassador to Pakistan has now met the Interior Minister of Pakistan. This coming in as terror attacks continue to target the entire Belt and Road Initiative under the watch of the Chinese government. This latest attack coming in near the Dasu hydropower project in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province in Pakistan. I'm joined by my colleague Abhishek Jha on the broadcast. Abhishek, this is not the first time where the project has come under attack from terrorists, but this adds even more pressure given the economic doldrums the nation of Pakistan finds itself in, along with the political instability of the coalition government.
Well, of course, Pakistan has been dealing with the security situation for a very long time, and the economic turmoil that it has faced in the last couple of years does require a lot of support from friends and allies, especially countries like China. And in CPSC corridor, which has a multi-billion-dollar investment coming in from China, can work like a lifeline for the dwindling economy of Pakistan. But the continuous attack by the several rebel groups operating in that Balochistan region has been a worry for China. The security, the staff for security, we have seen earlier also, attack has been on Chinese infrastructure. Chinese nationals have been continuously been attacked. And this time, the death of 5 Chinese nationals has become a big issue. We have seen Chinese ambassador in Pakistan meeting the internal minister of Pakistan. Then, of course, Chinese Chinese embassy in Pakistan has also issued a statement asking for reassurances from Pakistani government that such events will not happen. And at the same time, those which have been involved in the perpetration of today's attack, they will also be dealt harshly.
Right, and Abhishek, any indication coming in that the Baloch Liberation Army is behind this attack?
Well, there have been several media posts on social media where we have seen visuals also posted by these so-called liberal forces from Balochistan, which have shown how the attack had happened, how this vehicle laden with explosive rammed into one of the vehicles that was part of the 13-vehicle convoy, and then the vehicle falls into the other side of the road. And about 4 Chinese nationals and 1 Pakistani national was in that van, and they ultimately died. And there are these video footages which shows that several Baloch rebel group have taken responsibility for this attack, and they have threatened that they will continue to do such attacks in the future also, unless another Pakistani state listens to the demand and these Chinese operations ceases to exist in that region.
Right. Abhishek, please stay with us now. Beyond this setback to the Chinese project in Pakistan, we're also getting some more breaking news where China has reacted on Foreign Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar's statement supporting the Philippines when it comes to the dispute in the South China Sea. Now, China has said that maritime disputes are issues between the countries concerned. Third parties have no right to interfere whatsoever. We urge relevant parties to face squarely the facts and truth on the South China Sea issue and respect China's territorial sovereignty and maritime rights and interests and the efforts of regional countries to keep the South China Sea peaceful and stable. So a very diplomatic language coming in from China, which is part of China's script, Abhishek. At the same time, S. Jaishankar's endorsement of the Philippines stand ruffling feathers in Beijing.
Well, S. Jaishankar was in Philippines, and then he was having some crucial meeting, and during the press conference only he supported Philippines' stand on South China Sea and how the two countries have been, and they foresee a collaboration in terms of keeping the South China Sea free for navigation for all, free and independent, and there should be no dominance from a particular country. Especially, there was no direct reference to China in that context, but we know that Philippines has been, in the last several days, have been dealing with the aggressive Chinese militia forces or Chinese Coast Guard ships, which have been continuously attacking Philippines' own vessels in the maritime boundary, which Philippines calls its own, and Chinese dominance, Chinese vessels have been pushing them away from their own sovereign zone. So when China's side calls out Indian External Affairs Minister for trying to interfere in somebody else's matter, the point is that Chinese